Hollow Street Players, The Goose That Laid the Golden Eggs by Aesop. The playhouse squatted on the edge of East London like a dying dog, ribs showing through rotten beams. Its once lush velvet, curtains now faded, featured moth holes and smelled of mildew. Carriages no longer lined the street outside, only the sputter of steam pipes and the hiss of fog from overhead airships clung to its stone like sickness. Inside, 5 souls refused to give up. Instead, they tried to remember what it felt like to be artists rather than beggars. The Hollow Street Players were 5, each clinging to the stage as though it were the only thing keeping them alive. Lydia Crow, once London's nightingale, smoked too much and masked her face rouge and powder as she whispered to herself in the mirror. Ambrose Flint, gaunt and solemn, stalked the boards like a priest at his altar, convinced the audience demanded more than performance. Beatrix, Vane the stunt expert, laughed too brightly as she played with her knives. Her painted face stretched with a mania that unsettled one just as much as it charmed. Dorian Pike, the troupe's playwright, littered the wings with half-finished scripts no one would perform, chewing over every discarded line like a penitent swallowing confession. But like a captain of a ship, he refused to leave for greener pastures. And at the center stood Silas Reed, their leading man, handsome still, though his eyes betrayed the terror of one who felt time pressing at the edges of his skin. Together, they were brilliant once, or so they believed, and now they haunted their crumbling playhouse, desperate for an audience that had long since turned away. Together, they were a wreck of egos and madnesses stitched together by desperation. One wet evening, after a show that no one attended, not even the drunks who once stumbled in for warmth, they gathered in the empty theater. The rain rattled against glass skylights. Steam coiled like ghosts through the cracked pipes that heated the hovel. Not a soul, Lydia spat, throwing her feather boa to the floor in all the fury that falling feather would allow. London would rather watch a dog fight than art. Art, Beatrix cackled, balancing a knife on her fingertip. Art is dead, love. We're the ones still rotting in the coffin. Silas drank from a flask, his voice dripping with disdain. We are dying because the city forgets beauty. We were once adored, yet here we rot. Ambrose slammed a fist to the stage. The audience is God, and gods must be appeased. We failed the sacrifice. Dorian scribbled frantic lines on his cuff. Perhaps, if you perform my work instead of these dusty classics. No one wants your lunatic scribbles, Lydia snapped. The last one we played is what led us to this ruin. The man writes with ink made of madness, she finished under her breath. Don't know about you lot, but I need a drink. Silas grumbled as he rolled his eyes. Their bickering escalated as he stormed downstairs, muttering to himself. He cursed when he entered the cellar. Their stores were low. Of course they were. The theater had been failing for nearly a year now. As he grabbed 2 bottles of wine from the rack, he noticed something in the space left behind. An outline of of a frame that looked like a door. Silas knew the building like the back of his hand. Or did he? Curiosity getting the better of him, he soon set about emptying the rack and moving it to clear the door. Meanwhile, his companions grew curious. "Where's he got to now?" Lydia snapped. "It can't take that long to fetch a bottle. Maybe he's drinking alone." "I know I would," Beatrix half sniggered. "Just come on," Dorian snapped as he made his way down the basement stairs. Grumbling, they followed their playwright down the narrow steps into the basement. The lanterns did little to penetrate the darkness. Water dripped in time with the scurrying of creatures just beyond the dark. "What's this, a secret stash?" Lydia cooed. "No, I just found it," Silas breathed. "The blueprints don't show this." Dorian frowned. "Well, it's there." "Who votes for going down the rabbit hole?" Beatrix said in a sing-song voice. Before anyone could answer, she lunged forward and jerked the door open. And there it was, a broom cupboard. In the center sat a wooden chest gilded with gold. Sitting alone under an inch of dust. "Let's just look," Dorian said. Ambrose pulled the chest out. Beatrix provided the bolt cutters. The latch broke with a groan. As they lifted the lid, dust fell like ash. Letters now showed through, engraved on the rim of the chest. "The carnival awaits." Together they explored its contents. Inside lay antique costumes, brittle scripts with ink that shimmered faintly, even pre-made posters. And at the bottom, a mask. Pale porcelain, lips curled into a smile too wide, hairline cracks spidering from its hollow eyes. At the center of its forehead was a dot. The troupe fell silent. Even Beatrix lowered her knife. "It's imperfect," Lydia whispered. "A relic from a better age." Beatrix shuddered, but could not look away. "No, it's an altarpiece. I feel its hunger." "Rubbish," Silas scoffed. He held it up. "A prop, nothing more." Dorian rifled through the scripts. "These plays, we've never staged them. Look, one is titled The Lantern's Mask. What symmetry, destiny." And so, with more gin than sense, they agreed. Next week, they would perform The Lantern's Mask, with Silas as the lead, the mask as his costume. The night of the play, the theater filled for the first time in years. Steam-choked Londoners, soot-faced workers, even a handful of nobles squeezed into the rickety seats. The mask gleamed under the limelight as Silas strode forth. The audience roared. Each line he spoke seemed doubled by another voice, deeper, sweeter, compelling. His gestures were grander, his eyes brighter. Laughter and applause thundered like a storm. Coins clattered into hats. The troupe wept with joy backstage. At last, they were saved. But when the curtain fell, Silas tried to lift the mask. Then he pulled. Then he clawed at the porcelain, screaming muffled curses. The mask would not budge. That night they feasted. The Hollow Street players gathered round a crooked oak table dragged onto the stage itself. Platters of cheap meat and pilfered fruit gleaming beneath guttering candles. Steam hissed in the pipes overhead. They ate as if kings, drank as if drowning. Listen to them still, Ambrose said, cocking his ear toward the muffled street where the crowd's echoes had yet to die. London itself is singing for us. Beatrix raised her cup to the lantern's mask, to the hollow street reborn. They cheered, cups clashing, grease-slick hands flung high. Silas did not raise his glass. The porcelain grin shone pale under lamplight. He whispered, hoarse, "It won't come off." They laughed at first, assuming it was method acting. "I clawed at it," Silas pressed on, voice breaking. It clings, like skin." Dorian leaned across the table, grinning wide as he chuckled. "Then perhaps keep it, old friend, if wearing it brings us fortune." He thumped the wood with a fist for emphasis. "In fact, why take it off at all?" A ripple of laughter followed, nervous but warming as the drink carried them. Silas's breath hitched. He tried again. "I mean it. You don't understand. It hurts." "Enough." Lydia's smile was thin, her eyes darting. "Tonight is for celebration. You're drunk, Silas. We all are. Sleep will mend you." Their cups rose again, the chatter swelling. He sank back, unseen, crushed beneath the mask's eternal smile. Hours later, when the others had collapsed in their beds, Lydia froze as she passed the door to Silas' bedroom. It was slightly ajar. Through its narrow crack she saw him. Silas crouched before his mirror, shoulders quaking, his fists raw and swollen from striking at his own face. The porcelain reflected endless white, uncracked, unyielding. His sobs were muffled, strangled beneath the grin. Lydia lingered, hand trembling at the knob. Then it fell as she walked away. The shows continued. They had to. Every night, the theater overflowed. Nobles brought gifts. Wine flowed. Women giggled on Silas's arm, and even the Royal Shakespeare Society offered him a coveted invitation. He began to wonder if maybe life with the mask wasn't so bad after all. Despite him politely refusing the offer, the others festered in envy. Fed by those around it, the mask's power grew. Silas began to speak off script, rattling off entire monologues and taking over the stage. Lydia practiced singing until her voice became raw, but the crowd watched only Silas. Beatrix performed her most dangerous stunts, but only his mask drew their gaze. Ambrose ranted of gods and sacrifice, tearing at his skin. Dorian tore pages from his newest script, stuffing them into his mouth and sobbing, "He's stealing my words. How is he stealing my words?" And still, the mask whispered louder. On stage, Sila's performances escalated, spouting sermons that enthralled the masses. Bow to the lantern. Bow to the light beyond light. The audience obeyed, returning each night, clapping until their hands bled. One night, Lydia cornered him. "Share it with me, darling, just for a night." Her nails trailed down the side of his face at the mask's edges. He struck her hard enough to split her lip. Later, Beatrix crept into his room with a knife, singing lullabies off-key. She plunged it into his chest. He gasped, bled, but the mask did not fall. It clung to her hands instead, pulling itself onto her face. The next night, she performed alone. The audience shrieked with delight, deaf to the corpse cooling beneath the stage. So it went. Ambrose, mad with zeal, murdered Beatrix with a stage prop sword, screaming, "I am the true priest of the audience." The mask slid onto him, drinking his blood with a hiss. Days later, Lydia poisoned Ambrose with her rouge, kissing his dying lips as the mask rolled to her. "The nightingale sings again," she whispered, donning it with trembling hands. Dorian, the playwright, became last. He strangled Lydia with her own boa, whispering, "Now my words will live forever." The mask pressed itself to his face like a lover. And so, the hollow street players dwindled to one. The theater thrived. A brilliant one-man performance, critics claimed. Night after night, Dorian performed, though no script was written. The mask spoke through him, voice rising and falling like carnival music. The crowd roared, entranced. Backstage, bodies lay in shallow graves beneath the boards, but no one seemed to notice or care. One night, after the final bow, a note arrived by hand, sealed in wax, bearing the crooked lantern. Dorian tore it open with shaking fingers. "You perform well. The carnival watches. The carnival awaits." He looked out into the darkened seats. For the first time, the audience was gone. Yet lanterns still swayed in the rafters, burning with no flame. Applause echoed, hollow and endless. And in his dressing mirror, the mask's smile spread wider. Moral of the story: envy makes a stage of ruin, and those who covet the spotlight are devoured by it.
Hello, this is Miss Grimm. Thank you very much for listening to my channel. Please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed my work, and stay tuned for more.